A group of heroes is headed into the dark forest on a mission to liberate their home. They all wield powerful weapons known as regalia, weapons that grant them power far greater than what any human is capable of, so they are fully prepared to defeat the dark beasts in the forest. However, the second they arrive, their driver gets yeeted into oblivion by one of the dark beasts. Everyone else springs into action, and their leader, Stefan, orders everyone to get in formation as they make a charge straight into the dark beast den. The cutlass user begins slicing up all the monsters in his path with his whirlwind technique, and Stefan uses his blade to slice the heads off a giant snake monster he was fighting. However, even with its head severed, the snake keeps trying to bite Stefan. But at the last second, Alicia is able to stop it by piercing its eye with her sword to finish it off. So far, the team has been doing pretty well, and now that all the weak monsters in the area have been dealt with, the team ventures deeper into the cave to track down the Beast Lord of the South. They eventually arrive at the center of the cave and come face to face with Clevites of the Moonlight. And you know it's going to be bad when the monster has an aura farming entrance. Everyone can feel the intensity coming from the beast, but Stefan is confident that he and his team can overcome anything with the power of friendship. Never mind, friendship isn't going to save them here. After seeing Clevites paint the wall with Stefan's blood, I'd be questioning whether being a hero was even worth it. But the tank seems to think he can do better, so he jumps into the air to attack it, but he's almost immediately beheaded midair. The others are finally starting to realize that they don't stand a chance in a direct battle, but it's too late for them to retreat or regroup because Clevites has begun picking them off one by one with its tail. The others are confused because they can't figure out how Clevites is getting to them so quickly, but Alicia realizes that the tail attacks are coming from their shadows, so she tells everyone to jump to create some distance from the shadow. Thanks to her quick thinking, she manages to parry the beast's attack and survive, but the others aren't so lucky. One of the surviving heroes jams his spear into the ground to summon an earth golem, but even the ground here is under the control of Clevites, so the hero can't continue his golem and several tail spikes emerge from the ground and slice him up. The lance user tries to charge forward and overpower Clevites, but while the dude is fighting for his life over here, Clevites is casually wondering how things as weak as humans manage to get into his lair. He then finishes off the rest of the heroes, so the only one left alive is Alice, who has been flying around with her sword to avoid getting hit. She eventually manages to get close enough to Clevites' face to land a good hit on him, but even her strongest attack barely leaves a scratch on Clevites. Meanwhile, Clevites is still deep in thought because he can't fathom the stupidity that led humans to attack his land when he hasn't had beef with them for over 1,000 years. But if they are going to keep bothering him like this, then he's going to need to come up with a more permanent solution. But first he has to deal with Alice, so he slashes her limbs off and sends her falling to her doom. A little while later, Clevites crash lands in the human kingdom, and he's here with vengeance on his mind. He was perfectly fine leaving the human kingdom alone as long as they had minded their business, but they just had to go trying to conquer his land. From what the heroes said before the fight, they were sent to fight by the king of Haydn, so he's going to need to have a word with him about this. The kingdom's archers are alerted to the threat, so they show up and take aim at Clevites. But unsurprisingly, those arrows do absolutely no damage. But despite the clear power difference, they continue attacking like it's going to do something. Clevites is just here for the king, so he was initially going to ignore all the other humans, but since they are attacking him now, he slaughters them all on his way to the castle. The castle guards begin prepping the rest of their defenses and aim their catapults at Clevites, but their weapons still have no effect on him, so Clevites rips through the castle walls with ease. Inside the castle, one of the guards goes to warn the king of Clevites' attack, but the king already heard all the crashing sounds, so he pretty much knows what happened. The heroes he sent must have failed to kill Clevites because the weapons of Haydn weren't strong enough yet. He realizes that Clevites is most likely here for him, so there would be no point in fleeing now because Clevites would just hunt him down. However, even if he is going to end up dying, the king wants to seal off the forge so the flames of Haydn are never extinguished. Meanwhile, Clevites is outside, and he is wondering why the humans here are so pitiful compared to the heroes that attacked him. At first he thought it might have been some kind of special training, but after the castle's guards fire Haydn metal ballistas at him, he realizes that their strength was in their weapons. Thinking back, even though it didn't do much damage, the sword Alicia used to slash his horn actually left a mark which shouldn't have been possible. Even if humans are nothing more than insects to him, an insect with a stinger can still be dangerous, so Clevites plans to get to the bottom of this. At the same time, down in the depths of the castle, the king goes to check on the forge of Haydn, but suddenly the walls around him begin to shake, so he realizes Clevites must be nearby and hurriedly seals the forge off. Moments later, Clevites rips the roof off the castle, and as soon as he spots the king, he calls him out. The king tries to act unfazed and tells Clevites that he has no right to speak to him like that. But Clevites tells the king to watch his tone because if he wanted to, he could wipe out all the humans in an instant. And not just the people of Haydn either, he could go after the people of the neighboring kingdoms as well. He could have killed the king by now. But even if he did that, another king would eventually pop up and disturb Clevites' land again. So he is giving the king of Haydn one chance to explain himself. He wants to know why he ordered those heroes to attack him. But instead of actually explaining the reason, the king practically spits in Clevites' face, saying a beast like him could never understand human ambition. Clevites has heard all he needs to hear, so he slices the king's head off and begins making plans to wipe all humans from the face of the earth. However, as he is walking out of the destroyed city, he comes across a baby crying after its mother had been crushed under some falling debris. Clevites feels no sympathy for it whatsoever, so he decides to keep walking. But then the baby's mother calls out to him and asks Clevites to save her baby. Clevites is a bit stunned by the mother's bold request, So he reminds her that he was the one who brought ruin to this kingdom, and he has even decided to wipe out all humans, so why would he want to save a human child? The mother understands his point, but regardless of what the adults may have done to deserve Clevitas' wrath, she insists that the baby has done nothing to deserve such a fate. Clevitas doesn't see the point in arguing about the baby's innocence since all humans are the same to him, but he's willing to play along, so he asks the mother if she can prove the baby's worth to him. The mother knows she won't be able to prove anything to Clevitas, especially since she's going to die soon, but she swears that if Clevitas agrees to save the baby, he will eventually discover its worth on his own. The mother dies shortly after and Clevitas walks off completely unfazed, but he does end up coming back for the baby, so the mother's speech must have gotten through to him. He still isn't entirely sure if it's a good idea to take this baby, but compared to his long lifespan, a human child's life is barely noticeable, so he is willing to look after it for the sake of curiosity. In the land of Ethia, there are 5 humanoid races, the first of which are the Duns, a kingdom of people with large numbers and great skill in architecture. The next are the Orgites, a kingdom of people who excel in hunting and medicine. The Slatans, aquatic people skilled in swimming and fishing. The Benti, barbaric people who are strong individually, but couldn't work together even if their lives depended on it. And finally, there's the kingdom of Haydn, or rather, there was the kingdom of Haydn because it's gone now. They were the oldest of the humanoid races and had great skill when it came to forging weapons, which is how the blades of Haydn were made. There is a lot more to the world than just Ethia, but beyond the continent's borders, it is surrounded by darkness on all sides. This darkness is where the dark beasts live and the 4 dark beast lords, one of which is Clevitas, so humans have never set foot outside Ethia. Back at Clevitas' cave, he brought the baby back with him, and after scaring all the beasts to make sure none of them eat him, he curls up next to the child to rest, but now he's not sure what to do with him. He can give him some of his energy to keep him strength up so he doesn't have to worry about dying anytime soon, but the baby is currently covered in poop. Clevitas did not sign up to deal with this, so he picks the baby up and drops him into a pit of spiders without a second thought. The baby immediately starts crying, and I probably would too if I was surrounded by spiders, but Clevitas assures him that he's safe. The spiders in that pit only eat poop, so he dropped him in there to get cleaned up, but that doesn't make it any less scary. Even after he pulls him back up, he won't stop crying, and Clevitas is starting to get sick of all the constant wailing. But as a dark beast lord, he can't go back on his decision, so he's going to have to see this through to the end. But to make sure the baby survives, he's going to need a human to look after it, so he walks over to the heroes he killed to see if any of them can be useful. Moments later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself staring at the sky, but she clearly remembers getting killed, so she wonders if this is the afterlife. However, once she sees Clevitas, she realizes she's still in his cave. She instinctively reaches for her sword, but Clevitas tells her he already threw all the weapons along with the bodies of her allies down into the ravine. However, she looked like she'd be useful, so he decided to revive her. Right now, Alicia is basically a walking corpse, and the only reason she can move is because of the dark energy that he imbued her with, but that's enough explaining for now, so he tells Alicia to make herself useful and give him some milk. It takes a moment for her to register what Clevitas just asked her to do, but he isn't joking, and this isn't a request either because he really needs that milk, so he uses his powers to force Alicia to comply. However, after several minutes of suckling, Clevitas finally realizes this isn't working. Alicia tells him it obviously wouldn't work because she's never had a baby before and she doesn't understand why someone like Clevitas would even want to keep a baby alive in the first place. Clevitas doesn't intend to explain his reasons to her, but since Alicia can't provide milk, he is going to need her to be useful in other ways. The baby won't die as long as Clevitas keeps giving it energy, but it will be perpetually hungry, so he asks Alicia if there's any other way to get milk. Alicia can't disobey Clevitas' command, so she tells him that you will need to hire a nursing mother to feed the baby, but to do that you would have to go to a human town, and with his current form, he's guaranteed to cause a panic, so he decides to take a human form so he can blend in. He doesn't have much to go off, so he decides to take the form of the baby's mother and says he will be called Kren, while the baby's name will be Luna. Kren tells Alicia to lead the way to the nearest village, but before that they need to stop so Alicia can wash Luna's blanket, but while she's washing it, she realizes the blanket has the Haydn royal crest on it. Meanwhile, back in what's left of Haydn, the news of what happened has spread, so a scout was sent to inspect the damage. He can't believe that a single dark beast was able to cause all this destruction, but this is exactly why he thought it would be too reckless to attack one of the beast lords. And the timing couldn't have been worse because the day of the attack was the day the crown princess was supposed to flee the kingdom with her son. Back by the river, Alicia confronts Kren and asks if he knew that Luna was from the royal family when he took the baby. Kren has no idea what she's talking about, so Alicia points out that the cloth Luna was wrapped in had the royal emblem on it and only members of the royal family can use it. Now that Kren thinks about it, the woman he got Luna from was crushed under the rubble of the castle, so it makes sense that Luna would be a member of the royal family. But that doesn't really change Kren's plans. Alicia asks what he means by rubble of the castle, so Kren bluntly tells her that he destroyed Haydn and killed the king last night. Alicia can't believe Haydn was really destroyed, but Kren reminds her that they were the ones who attacked him first. Kren doesn't think it's a big deal, but Alicia says it's a really big deal because if Kren really wiped out Haydn, then Luna must be the last member of the royal family, and that means tons of people are going to be coming after him. Kren asks why, so Alicia explains that only members of the Haydn royal family are able to use the special forging techniques used to make the Haydn weapons. But immediately after she says that, she realizes she gave away too much information. Kren hadn't given much thought to what he wants to do with Luna till now, but if he's really that important, then Kren wouldn't mind making him the new king of the humans. That way, Kren would be able to control everything from behind the scenes and crush the humans once and for all if they step too far out of line. But right now, they still need to get some milk for Luna, so he tells Alicia to get moving. Alicia still doesn't know why Kren is so attached to Luna, but she is certain that if anything were to happen to him, he would probably kill every last human on the continent, so Alicia needs to protect him at all costs. A few hours later, Alicia wakes up and finds herself chained up in the back of a carriage. Klen is glad to see that she's finally awake, so he calmly informs her that they were captured a little while ago, but Klen doesn't really feel like doing anything about it since Luna is sleeping right now. Alicia, on the other hand, is very concerned, mostly because she doesn't understand how the soldiers managed to subdue Klen so easily. She asks him if he is as weak as a regular human when he is in this form, but Klen tells her that's not it. He still has all his powers, but this is the first time he has ever taken a human form, so he had no idea that the human skull is so fragile. Anyway, he says that now that he is aware of his body's weakness, no one will be able to catch him by surprise again. Alicia is glad to hear that, but if Klen is already back to full strength, Alicia asks why he hasn't broken them out of here already. Klen tells her that right now he is acting the part of an ordinary human, and until he has successfully made Luna king, he doesn't want to reveal his true identity. Besides, part of the reason Klen is doing all this is so he can learn about human nature, so he is interested in seeing the more sinister side of humanity. On that note, he doesn't really understand what's going on here, so he asks Alicia to explain things to him. Alicia tells Klen that they were attacked by bandits, the lowest of the low in society. And from the way things look right now, the bandits intend to sell all the survivors to a slave trader. Klen asks how strong these bandits are meant to be, and as far as humans go, Alicia says they aren't that strong. They will resort to dirty tricks without hesitation, so they are really hard to deal with. Alicia assures Klen that most humans are nowhere near as scummy as bandits, so he shouldn't base his opinion of humanity off them. Eventually, they arrive at the bandits' base, and all the captives are told to get moving. One of the men refuses to let himself be sold into slavery, so he tries making a run for it. But with his arms shackled and his legs weighed down, he isn't very fast. The bandits notice him trying to escape, so one of them takes a knife out and throws it into the man's back, killing him in an instant. The other bandit then announces that anyone who tries to run away or disobey them will meet the same fate, and all the remaining captives are so terrified that no one can bring themselves to fight back. Klen finds this whole dynamic intriguing, but before he and Alicia could continue walking, one of the bandits comes over and tells Alicia she needs to follow him. Klen lets them take Alicia since he still wants to see how all this will play out, and all of a sudden, a woman yells at him for not working. Since Klen is technically a slave now, he decides to play along and goes over to see her since she called for him. But as soon as she sees that he's holding a baby, she starts calling for a woman named Nell. Nell is the poor slave who's forced to do all the hard work at the tavern, and she's a bit clumsy, so when Carm calls her name, she ends up falling over. Carm yells at Nell for dropping all the sheets on the floor, and Nell apologizes, but that aside, Carm tells Nell that she will be in charge of looking after this boy's baby, and as soon as Nell sees Luna, her eyes light up because she really likes babies. Meanwhile, Alicia is brought to the office of the bandits' vice captain, Vroko, but Vroko yells at the two of them for not calling him boss. The other bandits think he's just joking around, but Vroko says he's serious, and if they refuse to acknowledge him as their boss, then he's going to have to let his pet Betty loose. Alicia is shocked that Vroko managed to acquire a troll monster from the west, and she's even more shocked by the fact that he has trained it as a loyal pet. Moving on to business, Vroko pulls out the bag of gems that Alicia was carrying when the bandits captured her. He knows that these gems can only be found in Luna Mountain, but that place is the territory of Clevitis, one of the four lords of dark beasts, so there's no way an ordinary person would have been able to acquire or even get close to the area. He also knows that the kingdom of Haydn recently sent out a squad of heroes to battle Clevitis, but the reports say that the heroes all failed. Vroko also happens to know that one of the heroes was a woman who looks an awful lot like Alicia. He mentions how Clevitis destroyed the kingdom of Haydn after the failed hero attack, and it was a real tragedy for everyone involved. But for the Raven Bandit group, it was the best news they could hope for. Vroko then pulls out a red blade, and Alicia is stunned because she can't believe someone like him possesses a monohederate sword. Vroko boasts about how swords made from this metal grant the user incredible strength, but he has never actually felt that surge of power, because the one in his hand right now is a fake since members of the royal family are the only ones who can make real magic swords. He tells Alicia that their bandit group sells two things, slaves and fake magic swords, since most people are too stupid to tell the difference. The rumors say that all the members of the royal family died at the hands of Clevitis, and if that turns out to be true, then the price for magic swords is going to skyrocket in no time. It is sure that the 13 regalia which were handcrafted by the king before his death would fetch a high price, but all of them were reportedly lost in the battle against Clevitis. However, with Alicia under his command, Vroko thinks he can find the regalia and sell them to make a huge profit, so he tells the two to make her lead them to the regalia first thing in the morning, and after that, they're free to do what they want with her. Meanwhile, Klein is diligently playing the role of a servant at the tavern. Nell is busy feeding Luna, so he has no reason to cause any trouble, but a few moments later, a bandit comes over and yells at Nell to get him some more beer. Nell puts Luna down and goes to get the beer, but even though she's doing what he asked of her, the bandit still kicks her in the back. After that, another bandit yells for Klen to bring him some meat, so Klen does as instructed and serves the bandit the meat with no complaint. The bandits are surprised that Klen isn't trying to disobey them at all, and they think he's going to make a great slave, but Carm still thinks there's something creepy about him. From the horn on his head, she assumed that Klen must have some Auberate blood in him, but his skin is way too pale for that, and his eyes seem way too cold for a regular boy. At the same time, Nell is minding her own business and carrying the beer when all of a sudden, one of the bandits intentionally sticks out his foot to trip her. Nell falls over and shatters the beer kegs on the ground, so the bandit starts acting like this is her fault and drag her outside to be punished. The bandits just enjoy seeing Nell in pain, so after beating her up, they casually start walking home as usual. Clen then uses his shadows to devour their bodies so there's no evidence of their deaths. After that, he finds Nell, and he asks her to lend him her milk because Luna is hungry again. Nell doesn't really understand what's going on, but she agrees to feed Luna, and while Luna is eating, Clen says he has a few questions he would like to ask Nell. He wants to know who she is and why she is with the bandits, so Nell begins explaining her backstory. She was born in the pirate camp, and although she never knew who her father was, she can clearly remember her mother. Things were never good for them, and from what Nell can remember, her mother was constantly mistreated by the bandits, but no matter how bad it got, she always endured it for Nell's sake. However, around the time Nell turned 12, her mother suddenly disappeared. Nell has no idea whether she died or managed to escape, but once her mother was gone, the bandits turned their attention to Nell instead and started hurting her for fun. As a result, Nell has lost most of her teeth, and she can only hear out of one of her ears now. Things got a little better for her when Carm took her in, and since then, the bandits stopped targeting Nell for their sick games. Plus, now she actually has a job to do. She makes lots of milk, so she can fill the stomachs of starving babies. Clen thinks Nell's story is intriguing, but from what Alicia told him, one has to have a child before they can produce milk, so he asks Nell where her child is. Nell's expression becomes sullen as she explains that she doesn't have one because it was a stillbirth. When Carm initially broke the news to her, Nell fell into a deep depression, and she honestly wished she would die at that point, but when she opened her eyes the next morning, she found a random baby suckling on her for milk. She knew the baby would starve if left on its own, so she let him drink as much as he wanted, and after that, more babies were given to her to feed, which is how she became the resident wet nurse. That's why even though her life hasn't been great, she wants to do her best to make sure that babies that need her milk are happy. Clen has heard enough, so he thanks Nell for telling him her story and asks her to come with him. He wants to hire her as Luna's wet nurse, and while he doesn't trust humans in general, he can tell that Nell is a good person. Nell says she's happy to receive such an offer, but she doesn't think Clen can really get out of here because he is a slave just like her, so she politely turns down his offer. Meanwhile, a few of the bandits are leading Alicia along a rope bridge, and once she realizes she's being led to a flooded mine shaft, she gets a really bad feeling. Down at the bottom of the mine, she sees a man walking up to the edge of the pier with a hook in his hands. The bandits all laugh because they know what's about to happen, but even though it's clear that he's being set up, the man still plans to go through with it because the bandits promised they would let him and his wife go if he retrieves the treasure at the bottom of the lake. The man dives in and begins swimming down to the bottom of the lake, but Alicia yells at him to get out of there immediately because according to the legends, this shaft is full of monsters. Moments later, those monsters jump out of the water with the man in their jaws and proceed to devour him right in front of his devastated wife. Alicia is sickened by what she just witnessed, but the bandits seem like they really enjoyed watching that man get ripped to pieces. The monsters in the water are called Arvensis, and they showed up during the Great Flood 300 years ago, and now they are confined to the water of these mines. Even Hero Cordwar, the strongest hero of his generation, was no match against them. And that was when there was still solid land to fight on, but now that mine is completely flooded, it's practically impossible to defeat the Arvensis. The magic sword that the old hero used was called Stream Splitter, and Alicia assumes that's the treasure the bandits told that man to go retrieve. But even though they promised him freedom in exchange for risking his life, the bandits never had any intention of letting him live even if he had managed to come back alive somehow. She calls them irredeemable scumbags, but the bandits tell her she's in no position to talk to them like that when her hands are bound, her feet are shackled, and they are on a bridge hundreds of meters in the air. There are even a dozen more bandits waiting to get the chance to torture her all night long, and Fido is particularly excited to make her scream. Given the situation, Alicia doesn't have many options left, and she was really hoping she wouldn't have to rely on Clevetess's curse, but it looks like she has no choice now. She immediately dislocates her shoulder and rotates her arms over her head to smash Fido's head between the shackles and make him cut the bridge's rope with his blade. This sends the two of them tumbling to the rocky mine below, and there is a disturbing crack sound as Alicia's body hits the floor, killing her instantly. The bandits look down, and when they see Alicia's dead body, they start panicking because they were supposed to get her to lead them to the 13 regalia that were lost. Meanwhile, down at the bottom of the cave, Alicia regains consciousness thanks to the curse of immortality that Clevetess put on her. Thanks to the curse, she can't die, but the curse doesn't grant her regeneration, so she's currently paralyzed from the neck down and she has no idea what to do. Every bone in her body is broken and she's already lost a ton of blood, so there's no way she'll be able to get out of here on her own. But it'll be bad if the bandits come down here and figure out that she's still alive, so she begins struggling in an attempt to move until the blood from her body rises into the air and Clevetess appears in front of her. Alicia is surprised to see Clevetess in such a tiny form, but he says he's only like this because he is manifesting himself from the blood magic in Alicia's body. This magic blood is what's keeping her immortal body alive, so if she bleeds out entirely, then she'll die for real. However, as long as she remains useful, Clevetess promises to replace all the blood in her system, and once he does that, she should be able to recover from the damage she has taken. Alicia is glad to hear that, but she notices that Clevetess hasn't started healing her yet, so she asks him what he's waiting for. Clevetess says he will heal her eventually, but before that, he has a question he wants to ask her. He recently found the perfect candidate for a wet nurse for Luna, and even as a demon, Clevetess could tell that Neru is being mistreated here. So he offered her a chance to escape and live a better life as Luna's wet nurse. But to his surprise, Neru turned him down directly. Clevetess asks Alicia if she has any idea why Neru would turn down such a great opportunity, and from what Alicia can tell, she thinks it's because Neru sees Clevetess as a slave incapable of fulfilling his promise. Bandit groups like this don't just allow people to leave, and anyone who does manage to escape inevitably ends up getting hunted down by the bandits. And after being born and raised in this environment, Neru probably believes there's no way she could possibly be free. Clevides asks her if there's any way to resolve the issue, and Alicia thinks the most straightforward method would be to kill all the bandits in the camp. That way, there'd be no one left to pursue Neru if she escapes, so she would be much more willing to agree to Clevides' offer. Alicia says it should be easy for Clevides to slaughter all the bandits here by himself with how much power he has. But Clevides says he doesn't want to do that. He can't risk anyone finding out that he has left the mountain because the people might try to take advantage of it and launch an attack on Clevides' land while he's gone. Instead, he says he wants Alicia to do it since it would be normal for a hero like her to slay a group of bandits during her travels. Alicia tries to protest, but Clevides cuts her off and says she should just do it, right before pumping her full of blood to regenerate her body. Bandits eventually make it down to the bottom of the mine to look for Alicia's body, but when they finally track her down, they are horrified as they witness her body bending and twisting in inhuman ways. Each time a bone snaps back into place or tissues reconnect, Alicia is put through excruciating pain. But by the time it's finally over, she's back to full health. The bandits have no idea how she managed to survive a fall like that, but they don't really care because as long as Alicia is still alive, they can force her to take them to the 13 regalia. They know she is a hero, so they need to be cautious, but they assume they should be fine as long as they jump her. However, one guy decides to charge ahead and face her alone, so he strikes Alicia on the shoulder, but after the pain she just experienced, this is nothing. Alicia then grabs his arm and punches him straight in the face before taking his sword and eye patch. She still doesn't like the fact that she's being forced to fight, but these bandits are irredeemable, so she needs to put them down. Now that Alicia is taking care of the bandits, all Clen has to do is find Neru and convince her that she really can escape this place. Meanwhile, Neru returns to the tavern and Carm has been waiting for her because she was worried. She hates seeing Neru get abused and beaten up like this, but there's nothing she can do to stop the bandits. Neru appreciates Carm's kindness a lot, but there's still a lot of work to be done, so Carm asks her to start clearing away the dishes. Carm notices that Neru is in an awfully good mood for someone who just got beaten up, so she asks her if something good happened. Neru wouldn't exactly describe it as something good, but she admits that it did make her happy. She asks Carm if she knows what the outside is like, and Carm is a bit taken aback because Neru has never asked a question like that before. Carm asks her why she wants to know, so Neru explains that she was born in the camp, so she has never gotten to experience what it's like outside, but Carm on the other hand was brought here, so she probably knows a thing or two about it. Carm admits that she knows of the outside world, but she doesn't have many good memories of it because like most of the other women that were brought here, they either had their homes destroyed or never had homes to begin with, so it's not something they talk about often. Carm asks why Neru suddenly became so curious about the outside, so Neru explains that someone asked her if she wants to leave. Carm smacks the shit out of Neru for daring to say something like that out loud, especially when there are still bandits in the tavern. The bandits here think of them as nothing more than slaves that can be discarded when they are no longer useful. That's why all of them had to band together and look out for one another, so Neru can't be saying things like that if she wants to survive here. Just then, Broko happens to walk in and he heard the whole thing, so Carm is really nervous about what he might do. She asks Broko what he's doing here since he rarely ever comes down to the tavern, but he just says he heard that a baby arrived recently, so he wanted to check it out. Carm asks Neru to tell Broko where the baby is, and last time Neru checked, Luna was in the stables, so Broko says he will go see for himself. But before he leaves, he asks Neru to come with him, and from the way he said that, Carm can immediately tell that it can't be good. She tries to stop Broko, but she doesn't have any authority here, so there's not much she can do, and Neru is completely oblivious to the fate that awaits her. Once Broko has taken Neru away, Carm slams her hands on the table in anger because Neru was the only one who would take care of the babies around here, but Broko doesn't seem to care about that at all. She tries convincing herself that there's nothing she could have done, and that Neru brought this on herself for talking about leaving in front of Broko, but she still feels really bad about what's about to happen to her. Just then, Clen shows up holding Luna, and Carm is startled at first because she didn't hear him come in, but then she realizes that he's probably just here because he wants to feed Luna. Unfortunately, she tells him that Neru is gone and she probably won't be coming back. Carm doesn't like it, but this is just the way things are here. Clen doesn't understand what Carm means by that, so he demands an explanation, and one look at Clen's eyes tells Carm that he's very serious about making sure Neru is alright. Meanwhile, Broko leads Neru down an old stairwell, and Neru is amazed because even though she's lived her whole life in this camp, she has never seen this place before. Broko explains that this used to be part of a large magic ore mine, and magic ores have a ton of uses. For example, the lamp Broko is holding uses magic ores crushed into insect oil to produce the fire, and before Broko became a bandit, he used to spend a lot of time researching the applications of magic ores. Particularly, ways to mix magic ores with various liquids to create interesting effects. By the way, just ignore those skulls on the floor because those aren't a bad sign or anything. Just then, Broko turns out the lights and Neru begins to panic because this place is pitch black, so she can't see anything in here. She pleads with Broko to turn the lights back on, and Broko obliges, but once Neru can see again, she is horrified to find Broko's pet monster standing behind her. Part of Broko's research was developing mixtures that would allow him to control demons like Betty here, which is also the reason he was able to become the leader of the bandit camp. And as the leader, he can't let someone like Neru live after she expressed a desire to escape, so he is going to have her executed at the hands of Betty. Neru begins panicking once she finally processes what's going on, so she frantically runs away, but then Broko gives Betty the order to eat Neru, so Betty starts chasing after her. As Neru stumbles away trying to escape, she thinks back to the offer that Clen made to her, and she really wishes she had taken him up on his offer, because things might have turned out different if she had. Just then, she spots Clen holding Luna at the other end of the tunnel, and the last thought that goes through her mind is how sorry she feels for not being able to take care of Luna anymore. Normally, this is where Clen saves her just in time, but nope, Nero gets eaten by Betty and is swallowed whole, so she's gone. Luna starts crying at the sight of such a horrific act, but Clen tells him that this is just the way the world works. Magic beasts need to eat, so he can't blame it for doing what it did. If anything, it was Clen's fault for not arriving in time to save Neru, and he is disappointed that he lost such a useful woman, but there's nothing he can do about it now. Clen then turns his attention to Broko, and he is confused because there's no way a proud troll from the Western Forest would ever submit to a short, buck-toothed man. Broko thinks Clen must be insane to insult him in this situation, and he isn't sure how Clen even got here in the first place, but it's not like it matters much. He tells Betty to eat Clen as well, but to his surprise, Betty refuses to move. He looks up at her to see what's wrong, and he is shocked to find out that Betty looks absolutely terrified. He has never seen her look this scared before, and for some reason, she refuses to go anywhere near Clen. She is so scared, in fact, that she involuntarily throws Nero up, but Nero is covered in stomach acid and missing an arm and leg, so she isn't looking good. Granted, she may be severely disfigured, but she is still alive, so Clen uses his powers to neutralize the stomach acid, and then he sets Luna down next to Neru so he can comfort her in her final moments. Clen then uses one of his shadows to carry Luna and Neru away while Broko isn't looking, and by the time he turns back to face Clen, Broko is shocked to see that the other two are gone. He thinks Clen must have done it by using some sort of magic, but Clen has no idea what magic even is. Broko thinks Clen is just feigning ignorance because magic is the only explanation for everything he has done so far. To put it simply, magic is the use of magic stone and tower ingredients to create special effects. For example, this drug in Broko's coat was made using magic stones, several herbs, and the larva of a parasitic fly. Basically, it makes anyone aside from him dumb as a rock, and after using it on Betty, she became completely subservient to him. Broko pours the drug into his fire to create a vapor, and as soon as Betty inhales it, she loses all sense of reason and attacks Clen in a blind rage. Clen's body ragdolls off the floor because he can't use much of his power in his human form, but while he is flying through the air, all he can think about is how pissed he is that Alicia didn't mention anything about magic to him. Meanwhile, Alicia is still busy cutting down the bandits, and she's already taken out 8 of them, but there are still a lot more, and the cheap sword she stole from the first guy is already broken. If she's going to kill all of them, then she's going to need a better weapon, so she starts running straight from the flooded cave. There are around 50 bandits left, but even with her immortal body, she can still get tired, so if she runs out of energy before killing them all, then she's screwed. Alicia eventually makes it to the water, but the monsters are already waiting at the surface, so if she jumps in now, she knows she's going to be eaten. That's why she heads up to the top of the scaffolding instead to trick the bandits into following her up. And once a large number have chased her up the scaffolding, she cuts the rope holding the scaffolding up and sends most of them plummeting into the water. With a large number of people in the water, the monsters go into a feeding frenzy and start devouring the bandits one after the other. However, Alicia was able to sneak past them by hiding herself in a barrel. And since she doesn't have to worry about dying from suffocation, she can just wait until she sinks to the bottom of the lake so she can find the legendary sword. Alicia eventually makes it down to the bottom of the lake, but even though she isn't going to die from suffocation, her body still needs oxygen to function, so it's really hard for her to move down here. She notices a faint red glow in the distance, so she uses all the strength she can muster to swim over to it. She eventually gets close enough to see the sword, but just as she is about to grab it, a giant eye opens up next to it, and something begins to rise. As Alicia is being swept around by the currents, she realizes that this isn't the bottom of the lake, it's the head of a giant dark beast that has been sleeping down here. And now that it's awake, it's trying to devour her. Alicia gets caught in the monster's teeth, but in all the chaos, she managed to grab a hold of the sword, so she's able to use it to break herself free. She is injured, and she barely has any strength left in her body from the lack of oxygen, but with Stream Splitter in her hands, she thinks she can get out of here in one piece. The sword's ability makes it incredibly effective underwater, so when Alicia swings the sword, it propels her forward, and she uses that force to head straight for the surface. She eventually makes it back up to the surface and takes a much-needed breath of fresh air, but the monster followed her up here, so it begins attacking everyone in sight. Alicia is able to get away for now, but she knows there's no way she can defeat an ancient dark beast like that on her own, and she is wondering what she should do. However, she then realizes something. This is a bandit camp, and she doesn't care about the bandits, so she can just leave since it's not really her problem to deal with. As Alicia is about to turn away, a few of the surviving bandits beg her to wait because they need help, but Alicia honestly can't believe they thought she'd save them after what they've done. She'd probably dance on their graves if she had the opportunity, but after that monster is done with them, there won't be anything left to bury. The giant monster finishes, devouring the last of the bandits, and thankfully, since that thing's a water beast, it has no interest in leaving that shaft, so Alicia can just ignore it now that she's a safe distance away. Most of the bandits died here, and with that thing awake now, there's no way the rest of the bandits will want to stay anywhere near here, so this camp is done for. Just then, Alicia hears Clen's voice in her head, and although he can't see what she did, he could sense that she has completed her mission, so he commends her on a job well done. However, he has a bit of a problem on his hands right now, so he needs Alicia to come help him. Alicia is shocked to learn that Clen, the all-powerful beast, is in trouble, but Clen says the circumstances are just out of his control. It's partially because he is in his human form, but he seems to have been affected by something called magic, and he's pissed at Alicia for not warning him about it sooner, so he orders her to get over here as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Broko is running for his life because after he used his magic mist to make Betty attack Clen summoned some sort of spike from the shadows and killed Betty in a single strike. Broko assumes that must have been some kind of magic, but he has never seen anything like it before, so he is absolutely terrified. However, as he is running away, he happens to trip over Nell's almost lifeless body, and when he sees Luna sitting next to her, a wicked idea starts brewing in his head. Back in the center of the cave, Alicia finally arrives and she's out of breath since she had to run here as fast as she could, so all this smoke really isn't helping. Clan notices the sword she is holding, so he asks her what it is. However, Alicia gets defensive and tells him he can't have it. She had to risk her life to get this sword, and it's pretty much the only reason she managed to survive, so there's no way she's giving it up now. Clan doesn't really care about the sword that much, so he decides to just let her have it. Besides, he's still got bigger issues to deal with, like this red mist. It doesn't seem to affect regular animals or humans like Alicia, but is incredibly effective against dark beasts. And even though Clan is a lot stronger than the average dark beast, his senses have still been dulled by it, so he can't smell anything and his ears are constantly ringing. Technically, he could just go back to his beast form and blow all the mist away, but this cave is rather cramped and he is worried about causing a cave-in since he isn't sure where Luna is right now. Alicia is shocked to hear that Clan left Luna alone down here. He says she should still be nearby. He set Luna to stay by Nell's side since she is on the verge of death, which in hindsight was a really dumb move, but it made a lot of sense at the time. Now he can't smell or hear Luna anymore because of the mist, so he asks Alicia to do something about it. Alicia has no idea what Clan expects her to do here because while she is aware of the existence of magic, it is practically a foreign language to her. Some humans can use magic, and some can't. That's just the way it works. All magic requires arcanite stones to work, and while some are gifted with the ability to draw out its power and achieve varying effects, but to people like Alicia, arcanite is just a useless rock. Clan calls her useless, but since Alicia can't use magic, they're just going to have to go looking for Luna with a mist in the air. But it's entirely possible that Luna might be dead already, so he's not getting his hopes up. Alicia asks Clan what he's going to do. He finds out Luna really is dead, but Clan says it won't really change much for him. He'd just lose what little interest he had in humanity, and if that were to happen, Alicia knows Clan would wipe all humans off the face of the earth. She needs to make sure they save Luna to stop that from happening, so she starts looking for clues, and after looking around for a bit, she notices a trail of blood on the floor, so she asks Clan if Nell was bleeding when he last saw her. Clan confirms it, but from what he can remember, Nell's injuries were so severe that she shouldn't have been able to move at all, meaning someone must have dragged her away, but they couldn't have gone too far. Meanwhile, Nell is being dragged across the floor by Vroko, but not because he needs her for anything, it's because she refuses to let go of him until he unhands Luna. Earlier, when Vroko found Luna, he was only interested in him because of his Hidnite blood, but when he tried to get closer, Luna sensed the creep vibes coming off him and started crying with so much energy that it caused the arcanite lantern Vroko was holding to explode. Something like this could only mean that Luna has extraordinary magic talent, and that led Vroko to realize that Luna must be a surviving member of the Haydn royal family. He has a lot of plans for Luna now that he knows he's a member of the royal family, but he's having a hard time getting away because Nell won't let go of him. Nell is so badly injured that she's practically dead already, but she knows nothing good will come from Vroko having Luna, so he won't let him take her. Vroko is getting sick of this, so he takes out his knife and is about to cut Nell's wrists off so he can get away, but just then, Alicia shows up and she demands that he stop what he's doing. Vroko is shocked to see her here since he's sure he told the other bandits to lock her up, but by now those guys are sitting in the stomachs of the monsters in the lake. Clan notices Nell on the ground. He realizes that she must have used every last bit of her strength to stop Vroko from escaping, so he owes her one for that. Vroko realizes his chances of beating these two in a fight are slim, so instead he threatens to cut Luna's fingers off if they come any closer. This gets Alicia to stop, but Clan doesn't see what the big deal is since even if Vroko cuts Luna's fingers off, he can just use magic to heal him later. However, while that may be true, Alicia knows firsthand how painful the healing process is and she doesn't want Luna to have to go through that, so she asks Clan to let her handle it. She calls out to Vroko and tells him she's willing to make a deal in exchange for Luna's safety. She shows him the sword she is holding, and as soon as Vroko sees the crest on the handle, he recognizes it as the regalia that was lost in the lake. Alicia throws it at the wall behind Vroko and tells him he can have it as long as he releases Luna. But I'm pretty sure it would have been a better idea to just throw it at Vroko's head since she probably could have taken him out like that. Anyway, Alicia tells Vroko he's going to need both arms to pull that sword out of the wall, but as long as he puts Luna down without harming him, Alicia won't stop Vroko from escaping. Vroko thinks about it for a second, but then he breaks out in laughter because a hero would never relinquish their regalia so easily under normal circumstances, meaning Vroko must have been right about Luna being a member of the royal family. And now that he is sure of that, he tells Alicia that one regalia isn't enough for him to give up Luna. If she wants him to let Luna go, then she's going to have to give him the exact location of all 13 regalia that were lost. Alicia hesitates for a moment since it would be terrible if Vroko were to get his hands on the regalia, but Clan tells her to just tell him what he wants to know because Luna is more important than a bunch of swords. Alicia agrees, so she informs Vroko that all the swords are at the bottom of a ravine near the den of Clevinus, but it's not like he'd be able to make it there to get the swords anyway. Vroko laughs and tells her that's where she's wrong, because even though Vroko can't fight, he still has magic on his side, so he pulls out a vial of powder and dumps it all over his body. He says this powder allows him to use invisibility magic, and while normally it would only be enough to make him slightly translucent with Luna's talent for magic, as long as he gets him to start crying, Vroko is able to turn completely invisible. Alicia and Clan can't see him anymore, so Vroko thinks he can just walk away without them noticing him, but he failed to account for the fact that Luna is still crying in his arms, so as soon as Alicia pinpoints the location from the sound, she appears in front of Vroko and slices him in half. Clan then catches Luna and dusts the invisibility powder off him, so they are pretty much done here, but Nell is still in pretty bad shape. She's still barely breathing, and it's thanks to her efforts that they were able to catch Rocco before he got away with Luna, so Alicia asks Clen if he can save her. But Clen honestly isn't sure if it's worth the trouble since he would need to use his dark ichor to heal her, but he's already using it to keep Alicia alive. Plus, Nell is missing a ton of body parts, so he'd need to rebuild a lot of her tissues and bones from scratch. It's going to be a lot of work, but Nell used everything she had to protect Luna until the very end, so Alicia pleads with Clen to save her. Clen eventually agrees, but he warns Alicia that he's going to have to briefly kill her so he can use the dark ichor to heal Nell, and Alicia says she's fine with it, but dying still really hurts. A few hours later, Clen is finally done rebuilding Nell's body, and he did an amazing job because she's not ugly anymore. He even fixed all the damage she suffered at the hands of the bandits, and Nell is confused, but she thanks Clen since he obviously saved her life. However, Clen tells her if she's going to thank anyone, it should be Alicia since she's the one who convinced him to rebuild Nell's body for her. And now that Nell is alive again, Clen presents her with the same offer as before to come with him and become Luna's wet nurse, and this time Nell happily agrees. The next morning, Clen confiscates Alicia's sword and she's devastated, but he tells her that having it out would draw too much attention to them, so he's just going to store it in his shadow until it's needed. In the meantime, Nell is done packing a bunch of the bandits' stuff for them to continue their journey, and she even found some nice clothes for Luna to wear. Alicia asks her if she's already carrying so much luggage on her own since it looks really heavy, but Nell says it actually feels light. Now that Alicia thinks about it, she recalls that Nell lost a large portion of her body when she nearly died yesterday, so Clen must have replaced those parts with something that made her stronger somehow, but she has no idea what he actually did. Nell approaches Alicia and offers to carry her sword for her since she wants to be helpful, but Alicia says she doesn't actually have her sword anymore, so Nell tells her that if she needs one, she remembers hearing something about Vroko keeping a bunch of cool swords in his desk. Alicia gets excited upon hearing this and begs Clen to at least let her have a regular sword. Clen knows Alicia is pretty much useless in battle without a sword, so he tells her she can go get one. She rushes off to rummage through Vroko's desk. With Vroko and the rest of the bandits dead, all the slaves have already run away, so this place is pretty empty now. Clen asks Nell if she's going to miss it, but she's had nothing but bad experiences in this place, so she's glad to be leaving. If anything, she wishes she could have said goodbye to Karm before they leave, and after hearing her talk about Karm like that, Clen realizes he might have made a mistake earlier. However, just before he could say anything, Clen is suddenly ambushed from above. While that's going on, Alicia breaks the door to Vroko's office down and starts searching through the desk. There she finds some money, a set of leather armor, and a decent sword, so she's satisfied and is about to return to Clen. But then Clen comes flying through the wall and crashes into the desk. He says he still isn't used to how easily this human body gets ragdolled all the time, but before he can explain what happened, Gart comes in through the hole in the wall, and at first glance, Alicia can tell that he is strong. She draws her sword to fight, but in the next moment, Gart lunges at her with a kick so powerful that the air pressure leaves a cut on her face. He's impressed that Alicia was able to react quickly enough to dodge his kick, but he doesn't think she can last long against him, so he starts hitting her with kick after kick until she loses her footing. Gart then jumps back and unleashes a torrent of wind, blowing Alicia straight through the roof. Alicia crash lands outside, and Gart is again impressed that she's still able to stand, so he offers her a deal. He's only interested in Clen, so he tells her that if she's willing to put her sword down and leave, then he won't fight her anymore. However, Alicia doesn't believe word Gart says since she thinks he must be one of the surviving bandits. She really wishes she had the Stream Splitter's sword right now, but since she doesn't, she's going to have to rely on one of the techniques she learned from Haydn. She clears all unnecessary thoughts out of her head, so now the only thing on her mind is running the fade with Gart, and her movements are much more precise now. Alicia's sudden burst of speed surprises Gart, but just as her sword is about to connect, Clen yells for her to stop. Alicia's body instinctively obeys Clen's command, but she still has nothing but murder on her mind, so Clen has to knock some sense back into her. Once Alicia is back to normal, Clen explains that this is all a huge misunderstanding, so there's no reason for them to be fighting Gart. Besides, if he hadn't stopped Alicia just now, Gart would have obliterated her body with a kick before she could slash him. Gart is a reasonable person, so he asks Clen to explain what exactly he meant when he said this is a misunderstanding. No matter how he looks at it, Nell over there smells an awful lot like a Western troll for some reason, and Gart was told that there was a troll being controlled in this camp before he came here. He's already seen the caverns below the camp, and he found the troll's corpse, but it had several body parts missing, almost like someone had intentionally removed them. Gart's hypothesis is that Clen is the leader of this camp, and he killed the troll for fun, but that's far from the truth. Clen asks Nell to take Luna and wait by the front gate since he has something to discuss with Gart, and once she's gone, he tells Alicia that Gart is really a dark beast in disguise. Alicia is shocked to hear this since she had no idea there were other dark beasts capable of transforming into humans, but Clen tells her Gart is just under the effect of a powerful illusion. As far as Clen knows, there's only one being who's capable of using such powerful illusion magic, and that's none other than the dark beast, Lord of the West, Zathir. And by the way, Clen doesn't get along with Zathir, so he'd like to avoid meeting him. Gart is shocked that Clen was able to figure out so much about him from such a short encounter, so he asks Clen to tell him who he really is. Clen doesn't want to reveal his true identity, so he lies and says he is a servant of the dark beast, Lord Clevites. Gart believes him, so he dispels the illusion magic and reveals that he is a bird monster serving under Zathir. Now that he has revealed his identity, he asks Clen to show him proof that he is also a dark beast, so Clen reveals one of his shadow tails to convince him. That's good enough for Gart, so he calls for a truce. But Alicia is freaking out because this is a lot of information to take in at once. First off, she had no idea there were other beasts capable of disguising themselves as humans and speaking the human language naturally like Clevites. If that's the case, Then what was the point of the heroes going into battle against Clevites in the first place? Clan notices the unease on Alicia's face, so he tells her to stop being so paranoid because there aren't many dark beasts capable of disguising themselves as humans out there. And aside from Zathir, no one else would even bother getting involved with the humans without a good reason. With that said, Gart wants to know why Clan is willingly associating himself with a human woman. Clan explains that Alicia is a human who we turned into his servant, so now she's forced to obey his commands no matter what. He is keeping her around to act as his guide while he learns about the human world. It's the same with Nell and Luna over there, but he doesn't intend to tell Gart anything more than that. Gart understands, so he won't ask any more questions, but he wants to make it clear that if Clen interferes with his mission, then he's going to have to kill him. And Clen tells him he is welcome to try, but killing him won't be easy. Anyway, since Clen answered one of Gart's questions, he says he has something he'd like to ask now. Earlier, Gart mentioned something about Zathir considering wiping out all of humanity, but he finds that strange since from what he remembers, Zathir always enjoyed observing the humans. The Orgites in the West even worship him as a god, so why would he suddenly want to wipe out all humans? Gart agrees to explain what happened, so he tells them that 3 days ago, he noticed that a few of the dark beasts in the West had lost their children. This by itself wouldn't be that strange, but he also found a vial nearby, and that led him to believe that the humans must be involved somehow. He went to Zathir and informed her of the incident, as well as 9 other similar incidents he discovered, and Zathir agreed that humans must be behind this, but she was a bit surprised that they would do something like this when she had treated them so well. She instructed Gart to go out and investigate, and if it is true that humans are kidnapping the children of the dark beasts in the forest, she's going to wipe them all off the face of the earth. Clen thinks about it for a second, and he realizes there may be a connection between the dark beast kidnappings and the bandits. Last night, while he was interrogating Karm, she told him that all the children who are born in this camp end up being sold to a mysterious group of men because of their talent, and that's what Vroko has planned to do to Luna as well. Clen assumes the dark beast kidnappings and the human children being sold must be related somehow, and since some kind of talent was mentioned, he believes magic must be a factor in this. Once Alicia hears Clen mention magic, her expression sours, so he asks her if she knows anything about it. She tells him that magic still isn't her area of expertise, but kidnapping children for their magical talent sounds like something the wizards would do. The wizards are people who change the way wars are fought in the human kingdom over the past few years. Right now, the outcome of battles almost entirely depends on the skills of the wizards each side has because a single wizard is capable of wiping out dozens, if not hundreds of men with one spell. Granted, wizards are also susceptible to attacks from other wizards, so it's not like they are unstoppable, but they are still a formidable force. The first person to introduce wizards into warfare was General Drell, otherwise known as the Dragon Slayer, and he is the same man who killed Alicia's father when she was little, so she has held a grudge against him for years now. That's an interesting story, but Clen doesn't understand why Alicia wasted her time coming after him instead of going after the man who killed her father, since Clevites never actually did anything to the humans before they attacked. But Alicia says it was her father's last wish, so she had to put her feelings aside and go through with the mission to advance through Clevites' territory. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the human kingdom, General Drell's army is heading towards the south, and he has got 50,000 men at his disposal because he plans to capture the ruins of Haydn and claim them for himself. What's left of the Haydn army is trying to stop him, but they've got 6,000 men at most to work with, and barely any wizards available, so there's no way they could fend him off. Meagle asks if the reinforcements are going to arrive soon, but with the current state of things, it will take at least 3 days for any reinforcements to arrive, so they are on their own. However, the commander has a plan to give them a fighting chance, so he tells Meagle that if they can get into the fortress at Highgate and seal it behind them, they might be able to hold their ground against Drell's army, even with a difference in numbers. However, that would require the cooperation of the soldiers inside the fortress, and even though he already sent a letter explaining the situation to them, he hasn't gotten a response yet, so he assumes the situation in the fortress must be chaotic as well. The commander and Meagle are yet to confirm whether the rumors about Clevites destroying Haydn are true or not, but if Bolate was willing to send General Drell to conquer it, he has to assume that Haydn really has fallen. If he had to guess, he would say Drell is after the Forge of Haydn, because without it you wouldn't be able to make any magic weapons. Meagle agrees that it would be bad if the Bolates were to get their hands on it and make magic weapons for themselves. But it's much more serious than that. The Royal Forge of Haydn is one of the oldest magic items in existence, so if the magic-obsessed Bolates were to obtain it, who knows what kind of secrets they would uncover. With that kind of power, it would be able to take over the entire continent, which is why the commander says they have to be stopped at all costs. At the same time, General Drell meets with the most powerful wizard in his forces, Maynard, and Maynard informs him that he has just confirmed that Haydn was indeed destroyed by Clevites, and all the members of the royal family have been confirmed dead, all except for the 6-month-old crown prince. He is the only one left who is of royal blood, but his whereabouts are currently unknown, so Maynard can't confirm whether he's alive or dead. But in other news, he recently got word from the bandits that they found a baby, and the description matches that of the prince, so Maynard thinks it's worth investigating, and Drell gives him full authority to do whatever it takes to find that baby and bring it to him. This was the end of episode 5. Subscribe to not miss the next part.